Your fingers pause on the rim of the pot. Then you turn it a few inches, just enough for one side of the leaves to catch the light differently. You're moving it again? A younger voice says, like the whole thing is a little too much, a little too exact. But when nothing else feels clear, even a small correction starts to matter. In some seasons of life, being able to make one thing sit right is not fussiness. It is proof that your hand still knows how to answer a problem with a change you can actually see. That is why this moment is so often read wrong. From the outside, it can look like you are overthinking a plant or making too much of a table no one else is even noticing. But the relief is not really in the pot. It is in the instant shift from off to better. And once that feeling starts carrying this much weight, the action is no longer small. This is not about the plant. It is about what the hand is trying to settle. And then something quieter starts to show up. You move along the patio table, pausing at each pot, turning one slightly, sliding another half an inch. Not rushing, just adjusting until something in the layout feels even again. The sun hasn't fully climbed yet, but you're already checking how the light falls across the leaves, how one shadow cuts a little too sharply, how another corner feels too crowded. From the outside, it looks like small preference, but the part that matters is what happens inside the body when a piece finally sits right. There's a brief drop in tension, almost like a held breath letting go. A tiny correction, and something settles. For many people, especially later in life, that matters more than it sounds. Because here, effort leads to a visible result. You move it, and it responds. You adjust it, and the change holds. In a day where many things stay unresolved or unclear, that kind of feedback is rare. And once your mind starts leaning on that feeling of seeing something become right because you touched it, the habit stops being about arrangement. It becomes a way of keeping the day from drifting too far out of reach. And the reason this feels so natural usually didn't start here. It was built much earlier, in a different kind of space. You remember standing in a garage with the door half open, noticing a cabinet hinge that didn't quite sit right. You didn't leave it. You found the screwdriver, tightened it once, then again, until the door closed clean. No announcement, no discussion, just a problem seen and then handled. That pattern stays. For a long time, life asked that of you. Things broke, shifted, needed attention, and you were the one who stepped in. You learned to trust that your hands could make a difference, that small actions could steady something before it got worse. That wasn't a hobby. It was a way of moving through the world. And when life changes shape, that ability doesn't just turn off. It looks for somewhere to go. Fewer big decisions, fewer visible roles, but the instinct to notice, to adjust, to improve something within reach is still there. So it moves into smaller spaces. A hinge becomes a plant. A door becomes a tabletop. The scale changes, but the need doesn't. And that's where the meaning starts to shift. What makes this harder to explain is what it gives back. You stand there, looking across the row of pots, and something small catches your eye. A plant leaning just slightly away from the light. A gap that feels uneven. A corner that doesn't quite settle. No one else would notice it, but you do, almost instantly. And without thinking much, your hand moves, correcting it. That is not just preference. It's a kind of awareness that comes from years of paying attention to how things sit, how they hold, how they drift out of place. You don't need a plan. You just know when something is off, and you know what better looks like without having to explain it. And that ability does something important. It keeps your space from feeling random. It keeps your day from slipping into a blur. When you adjust something and see it hold, there is a quiet sense of authorship. This changed because you changed it. But the same sensitivity has its edge. The more clearly you see what's slightly off, the harder it is to ignore it. And that's where the habit starts doing more than it shows. And then there are moments when everything already looks right. The pots are spaced evenly, the light is falling the way it should, nothing is obviously out of place. Still, you don't walk away. You stand there a little longer than expected, scanning, as if something might reveal itself if you give it another second. From the outside, that can look unnecessary. But inside, it's different. When there's nothing left to adjust, a quieter feeling has room to rise. Not dramatic, not even fully clear, just a sense that the steadiness you felt a minute ago is starting to thin out. For many people, this is where the cost shows up. The same habit that creates order can slowly become something you lean on more than you realize. A small correction brings relief. No correction leaves a space that feels harder to sit with. And that doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It means the action has taken on a second job. It's not just keeping the table in order anymore. It's helping you manage what shows up when there's nothing left to fix. And this is where people around you often get it wrong. A younger person scrolls past the patio, glances at the table, and sees you turning a pot again, lining things up that already looked fine to them. You don't have to keep doing that, they might say, half joking, half puzzled. To them, it's extra. To them, it's something to skip. But what they're comparing it to is completely different. Their way of settling the mind might be a screen, a distraction, something that pulls attention away. Yours moves in the opposite direction. It narrows attention, brings it into something you can touch, something that answers back when you act on it. So from the outside, it's easy to label this as fussing. It's repetitive. It's small. It doesn't seem to lead anywhere important. And in one sense, that's true. But at the same time, something else is happening that doesn't show. The movement of your hand is giving shape to a moment that would otherwise feel loose. It's turning a vague internal pressure into something visible, something finished. And that's the part no one else can see. But the more private layer usually shows up later, not when you're in motion, but in the brief pause between one adjustment and the next. There are things now that don't respond the way they used to, decisions that aren't yours to make anymore, repairs that don't sit on a bench waiting for your hands. You might notice it in a small way, a chair that isn't yours to fix, a situation that doesn't shift no matter how clearly you see what's off. And that's where the weight quietly moves, because when larger parts of life stop answering to effort, the smaller parts begin to carry more than they should. So turning a pot becomes more than alignment. It becomes evidence. You move it and something changes. You act and the world, at least this small corner of it, responds. That doesn't mean you're trying to control everything. It means you're holding on to something essential. The feeling that your actions still have reach. And when that feeling starts to matter this much, the habit is no longer optional. It's protective. Maybe some of these tiny corrections are carrying more than the moment itself. That does not make them pointless, and it does not make you weak. This is what steadying work looks like when a person still needs visible proof that their actions matter. The deeper truth is that the plant is not only being positioned, the self is being kept from drifting. From the outside, they see someone fussing over a few pots, adjusting things that were already fine, making something small into something bigger than it needs to be. That's the version that gets talked about, the one that's easy to label and move past. But what is actually happening is quieter and far more specific. You're taking a corner of the day and making it answer back. You're turning uncertainty into something that holds still long enough to feel. You step back from the table, not to admire it, but to check if that internal pressure has eased even a little. And for a moment, it has. That moment may look small, but it's doing real work. It's not about moving the plant. It's about proving something can still be made right. And if someone could see that clearly, they might understand why you didn't walk away sooner. Your hand comes back to the same pot. You turn it once more, slower this time, then stop. Not because there's nothing left to fix, but because something in you recognizes that this is enough. The leaves catch the light the way they should. The space between the pots holds steady. From the outside, nothing significant has happened. But inside, something has. The action wasn't about getting it perfect. It was about confirming that your touch still matters, that your sense of right still exists and still works. You don't need to explain it. You don't need anyone to agree. The table is quiet. The arrangement holds. And in a world where many things no longer respond so clearly, this small corner still does. And that is not a small thing. And the need to make small things right starts to matter this much, it can feel confusing, even to you. But it's not a flaw. It's a signal. It points to a part of you that still wants to act, still wants to see the world respond, still trusts that effort should lead somewhere real. That doesn't disappear just because life changes shape. It looks for new places to land. And sometimes, it lands on something as simple as a pot on a table. Not because the object is important, but because the feeling it restores still is.